Well, hi everybody. Welcome to podcast 8 from Old Head and
Young Shoulders.
And it's worth saying why we're called this. Cam is one of my ex-students. I used to be his head teacher.
Old head teacher.
Former head teacher, I prefer to say. And I heard all about his motivational work, follow him with interest. And
you actually booked me once.
I did book you once. Did I book you
I don't know how that happened. That was in the sports hall, I think. It was only for like 10 minutes.
Right.
I think it was the first kind of year of me doing what I was doing. And I think I just asked you guys for an opportunity. Let me come and show you guys what I do.
I remember.
And I think it went well. That was probably one of your last years of teaching, maybe.
And it grew from there. That would have been about 2012.
Yeah.
But Cam and I were talking, and we thought there's something here about shared work, about Old Head, Young Shoulders, and that's why we're doing these podcasts. Amazing how quickly the first 7 have gone by.
Yeah, I know.
And some positive feedback.
Yeah, some really good feedback online. And if you guys haven't already, make sure you go and check out the previous episodes. We're on YouTube, iTunes, literally everything. We've got our own website, so go and check that out. And you can also contact us on there. But one bit of feedback I did have from one of my close friends, who's being honest, I guess. And his bit of feedback was, I just talk too much.
Yeah, I can see where he's coming from. But the good thing is that you talk a lot of good stuff as well. So
I agree.
It swings and roundabouts.
But one thing he did ask, he said that he doesn't know actually what you do on a day-to-day basis. And when I kind of cast back to the other 7 episodes, I don't think we've spoken about it. We know what you've done previously when you was in the Navy. We know you was an old head teacher, old head teacher. And so what we want to kind of know now, just what I think would be good for you to share with everybody, is what do you do on a day-to-day basis? I know what you do, but are you still in education? What does your job look like? And so on.
I guess I don't like to bang on about it because I think that the message is the important thing. But if you're encouraging me to be autobiographical, I finished headship, and headship was the best job in the world. And I'd like to think it went well. 12 years, you accumulate a lot of experience. So I didn't want to stop work. Work is really important. And you need a reason to get up in the morning. It's all about feeling useful. So I decided to reinvent myself. I set up my own company, my own consultancy company, Peter Rowland Education Limited. And I work now with about 40 different schools.
40?
About 40 different schools.
Wow, across...
In lots of capacities, lots in the southwest, an increasing number in Wales.
Okay.
And I'll go in, I'll meet with a head, I'll meet with the senior leaders, and we'll talk standards. We'll talk about what standards are like, how they can be even better, and making sure that you identify the key actions that are going to make the difference. And I get a real buzz now of seeing where the next generation of head teachers are coming from. So I really enjoy meeting sharp, young assistant head teachers, deputy head teachers, and just encouraging them to have the self-belief that they could go on and they could be outstanding head teachers of tomorrow. So that's what I do at the moment. I do other stuff as well. Wow. I work with Gloucester Heads still. I do charity work.
So you do a huge amount around leadership then, I guess.
Yeah, it's all about leadership. It's about leadership at different levels in the school. You can't just rely on senior leaders to be driving improvements. That's a really unhealthy top-down model. For me, if a school wants to get better, it's all about strengthening middle leadership. You've got to have strong senior leadership, but if the real engine room are those middle leaders.
Wow. That is interesting. I think that kind of falls into the topic I want to talk about today. And I feel like we could probably spend about 5 or 6 different podcasts talking about this particular topic. But I think to begin with, let's just start with it. And the topic is growth.
Growth. Okay.
And it comes down to things you just mentioned, self-belief, really pushing for things, and why it might be important to do that. So let me talk a little bit about my example. So my example is we got Alex here now, which is one of my first ever technically employees, I guess, who will be starting next week. And on top of that, we also obviously put this studio together. So as far as kind of as a business standpoint, it's always been me, and I've always just had to worry about me. But there's only so long you can do that, and I came to a point in doing what I'm doing in my career is where I wasn't growing as much as I possibly wanted to. Say 4 or 5 years ago, where I am now, I'm completely happy with, but now it's time to elevate and take it to the next level.
Well, just pause there for a minute, because you've always been very keen on having a dream.
Yep, that's true.
And 4 or 5 years ago, you had the dream. I think it's really important to have that initial vision, that initial dream, but put a date on it. Put a date on by which time are you going to be achieving the main bulk of that. And that if you put a date on your dream, it becomes a goal. And if you then break your goal down into different steps, it becomes a plan.
Yeah.
And if you then back up that plan with action, then you get results. That's what you've done.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what I've done. I've done that. I haven't been as organised with it as I would like. But now it's the process you just discussed is now the process which I follow. And I feel like I refined, is that the word? Refined my process and simplified my process into that, which is now the growth is so much more quicker and so much more efficient, because the first 2 or 3 years, I was just doing what I do on a daily basis just to get by. But
I'd say, I'm conscious that you've just said that you talk too much, so I'm going to interrupt you more this time. One thing to point out is that you've been learning your way forwards. And you haven't been afraid to make mistakes. And that thing about, but my best teacher was my last mistake. Well done for learning your way forward. And there's this myth that improvement is a nice smooth journey. No, it isn't. It's like that.
Yeah.
So, well done for navigating your way around all the pitfalls. You've made a few mistakes along the way. I'm sure you have. You wouldn't be human if you didn't. But you learn from them.
Let me ask you a question then. What did you just do it again? What did you say improvement looks like? What example did you just do?
I did that.
So, okay, with that said, that's going up.
Yeah.
Is there a chance it can go down?
It does go down.
And what happens?
It goes
but
like
instead of going up, it goes down, up. But
well, then it's not improvement if it doesn't go up.
So let me ask you a question then. What if over a long period of time it's not improvement, but what if you feel like you're falling into that slump of going down? How do you turn it around? Going off as we normally do.
I think let's talk about schools. Let's talk about year 11.
Okay. In
year 11, there will be a significant number of students, good people, who are working really hard and yet they're not making progress. They're stuck. I think of them as the help group. They're high effort, but they're low progress. They're stuck for one of 2 reasons. 1, they're probably working hard on the wrong things, or 2, they don't know how to improve. And to help students like that, it's all about them getting really specific feedback on what they need to do to earn extra marks to improve. So it's all about, for me, really effective feedback. You've got to be somebody who thrives on feedback and who gets specific feedback on what to do better. And you need to be giving feedback to yourself. If you're a sole trader, if you're setting up your own business, then you've got to be honest with yourself. You can't con yourself. And the more feedback you can get from other people, like Alex, the better. The better.
Yeah. Do you think that happens, Dave? Gadget line? Because to begin with, when I think about before, say, Alex came along, before the studio, and say 2 years ago when me and Dave was on the road, his business has stepped up massively in the last couple of years. And there came a point when I think we might not have kind of consciously thought about it as feedback, but there was many times we probably helped ourselves and talked ourselves through the process, or supported each other along the way. So I think even if you don't think you're giving somebody feedback, or even if you don't think you're receiving feedback, you probably are.
I think you deserve a medal for the way you've grown your business.
I thought you were saying grown in height.
But Well,
No?
I'm still waiting. But there's something here about being
Don't
a risk,
laugh.
being a risk taker. If you've got young people out there who want to grow and develop, they've got to embrace challenge. Get out your comfort zone. That's where the good stuff happens. So I think there's a sort of a bit of a cycle here. You've got to enjoy the success of other people and try and learn from them.
What do you mean?
Well, You'll have seen other motivational speakers out there, and you'll have thought, yeah, I could have a bit of that, and you need to be inspired by other people. Don't be selfish about it. Accept that there are other dynamite people out there. What can you learn from them? What can you take away?
Okay.
Then you embrace the challenge. Then it's all about making sure that you thrive on the feedback. Then it's all about deliberate practice. Keep repeating it. Be resilient. Overcome setbacks, but keeping on.
Why do we always focus on the one negative bit of feedback, though? So, for example, you could have 1,000 messages, but then you just get one bad one. It might not even be that bad. Somebody might just say, well, it was okay. And then that okay message is the one you think about.
Recognize that as a fault in yourself and work on it. They talk about, teachers are told about how to improve behaviour. And Bill Rogers, an Australian guy, I think he is, talks about the black dot. If I showed you a piece of white paper, a huge great piece of white paper, and in the middle is a tiny black dot, you will focus on the black dot.
That's true.
If I'm teaching 30 students, I'm in danger of forgetting that 29 of them have had a great lesson. I'll remember the one who didn't.
That's true.
So you've got to be aware of that tendency in yourself, and don't show yourself a bit of compassion. Don't beat yourself up all the time. Yes, you've got to keep pushing. You've always got to be hungry for more, but show yourself some kindness along the way. Don't beat yourself up if there's one bit of negative feedback. Hang on to all those positives.
Are we talking about growth here?
We're talking about growth. We're talking about it from different angles.
I think we are.
We're talking about young people growing and developing. We're talking about you growing and developing a business, and there's some common themes.
There really is. And it comes down to, as I said, we took on a studio, took on a first employee, and there is a risk what comes with that in a way. But I'm willing to do literally whatever it takes to make it happen. I think that's apparent. I think people can see that. I go diving in with both my feet, head first type of thing. I'm willing to do whatever it is. That's not always the best way to go about things. I'm not saying it is.
I was going to say, you probably do less of that now because you've learned that you could save yourself a lot of grief just by stepping back, listening more, planning more.
Yeah.
It's all very well learning your way forwards, but as you get better and better and better, you can anticipate. Is there something here about anticipation? You'll get people who grow get increasingly better at noticing the pitfalls that lie ahead. So maybe the improvement journey smooths out.
Yeah.
The
and that comes with experience, I guess.
It gets with, yeah.
Especially at your age, I guess your curves like that.
I still make hideous mistakes. But yeah.
But okay, because you said earlier about getting out of your comfort zone. So the way I understand that's risk.
Yeah.
That's risk. So is taking risk an essential part of growth? An essential part of improvement? Is risk something you need to do to go to the next level?
It absolutely is. But be canny about it. Assess the risk first. Don't just dive in with both feet because you never know what's going to be underneath the surface. What's good is about thinking, yeah, I'm going to get out my comfort zone. I'm going to take some risks. I'm going to calculate what those risks are, and then I'll take that calculated risk. I'll minimize the risk if you like, but I'll go for it. And I think there's something really exciting about reinventing yourself at various times in your life. You might be doing well, but there is always something new that you could take on. I think really successful people, they're never satisfied. They're always hungry for more, and they're always willing to reinvent themselves and try and do something different.
But then can that be damaging if successful people never become complacent?
Successful,
is that the right word or right term I'm using?
The danger is that you become complacent. So better to stay hungry.
Is that a bad thing though?
Complacency is a bad thing, yeah.
Okay, why?
Because you start taking things for granted. You lower your standards, you lower your expectations. Complacency is not a good thing.
Okay. And just say, as a senior leader, somebody in a company, in a school, or whatever it might be, why should they be looking to improve? Not just the school, but maybe themselves, maybe as a husband, as a wife, as a father, as a mother. Why should they focus on improvement and in different areas of their life? And if they say improve their home life, will that maybe help their teacher life?
You're back to mindset again. And I think really skillful leaders help people develop that kind of mindset, that kind of Kaizen mindset. I can always do something better. So for me, teaching was never my job. Teaching was my passion. Getting better at it was my job.
Okay.
If you can get that sort of mentality, and I think that applies to any profession, getting better at what you do, that's your real work.
So let me ask you a question, personal question. What did you personally do when you was a head teacher to get better?
Listen, surround yourself with really good people.
Listen to who?
Listen to colleagues, learn from their experiences, read.
Books.
Yeah, absolutely. But just gather your intelligence, and also, I've said it before, invite feedback. What kind of job am I doing?
Feedback's scary.
Feedback is
scary.
Feedback is scary, but you need that. Otherwise, you're misguided about yourself.
That's true.
So becoming a better leader, I think, is about staying humble. Just assume that you're not yet a good leader, and learn from the best. And also have your own style as well. Don't try and be somebody else.
Don't try and copy.
You can be. There are heads out there who are huge personalities. That's fine, but sometimes other people don't thrive. Big personalities cast shadows, and other people don't necessarily grow in those shadows. There are different styles. There are quieter head teachers who are equally effective, who believe in growing the team. So I think there's no one style of effective head teacher, but you need to work out what your style is. So you're always true to yourself. And I haven't mentioned, but you're values driven all the time. You know what your values are. Stuff happens. You get blown off course in any leadership role, but you'll always stay true to your values.
Interesting.
Cam is stuck for words. This is a rare moment, everybody. Savor it.
No, I just want to make sure that I ask you the questions I want. I don't want to leave this podcast today because we didn't have nothing planned and we freestyle and whatever. Well, it's not really a freestyle because it's years of our experience, what we're talking about. And I just think it's so important to even understand your perspective as a leader, because not only have you been in that position, you have also worked with many different leaders, and you still do.
Yeah.
So to be able to do that, you must be willing to open your mind enough to actually see what other people are going through, open your mind enough to listen, open your mind enough to share different practices, and maybe apply things you never thought you might apply before.
Well, that old cliche about your mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. You've got to maintain that open.
I like it. What was that? Say it again. Say it again.
Your mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. And we don't know what we don't know. And it was only I think you need to surround yourself with other good people. You need to. Networking gets a bad press, doesn't it? Networking sounds a bit glib somehow. Networking, what's all that about? It's about hearing other people's experiences. So I thought that my school was doing well until I went up and met London head teachers who were facing far greater levels of deprivation than we were and were achieving stunning results. And I suddenly had thought, what I thought was good isn't good.
Okay.
I've got to raise my game. The other thing I think we ought to mention, if we're talking about growth, is be really good at identifying what identifying what the barriers to growth are. What are the things that are going to stop you from growing? If you can identify what those are, then you can work a way to overcome, to work around those barriers. So I think that's really what in teaching you'd want to know what the barriers are to learning. If that child isn't achieving, why not? What are the barriers? Get rid of the barriers.
That's interesting what you said. So there's a couple of points I wanna get to. But some people, they have such a big ego and so much pride. When they would have went to, say, those London secondary schools, they would have seen how well they are doing, and then some teachers might make excuses for why they're successful and why they are not. And then they stay in their bubble and don't want to learn from it. People like yourself, on the other hand, seeing what they're doing, take it with you, take as much knowledge and ideas away with you, and then start to apply it into your system. So then it comes back to that whole idea of opening your mind, like we just said. But I want to quickly flip the switch, right? Because we said about an open mind or a closed mind. And when I was in school, as you know, I had a very closed mind. I had to go through what I went to be willing to change, essentially. And some people are like that, others are not. What advice would you give to teachers when they approach a student with a very closed mind? What advice would you give? So an example would be, when I was in Eastbourne the other week, when I was in Eastbourne, there was a student in my lesson who said, sir, he said, you don't know me, but I'm dumb. I said, what do you mean you're dumb? He's like, I'm just dumb. I'm like, you're not dumb. Like, what does that even mean? And then obviously I was balancing a session with about 25 other students, but I remembered it. And I pulled him up after, even with a couple of his friends. I said, you could argue with me all you want right now, but just give me 10 to 15 seconds. I say, listen to me. Don't ever, ever tell me that you are dumb, because you are not. He's like, well, I don't care. I'm like, but you do care. I can see that you care. So please don't go through the next 8-9 months in school thinking that you are dumb. Okay, you might struggle with the school system. You might struggle to sit in class. You might struggle with exams, but that still doesn't define you. You are not dumb, and just because that might not work for you doesn't mean you can't excel at something else. Where
you asked me what advice I'd give to teachers who meet students like that.
Or maybe even bosses to staff.
You've got to keep the faith. You've got to chip away at that mindset. You've got to be really stubborn, and you've got to be really positive, and you will wear them down with positivity.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Catch people being good all the time. Celebrate little successes and grow somebody's... I'm doing some work around the parallels between teaching and gardening. It sounds a bit wacky, but it's about...
Teaching and gardening.
Teaching and gardening. What are we talking about?
Oh, there's me being close-minded again.
What are we talking about? We're talking about growth. Well, growth is a gardening term, isn't it?
True.
There are parallels between gardening and teaching. So you've got to grow self-belief. And true growth takes time. Plants don't whiz up like that. You've got to nurture them. You've got to support them. You've got to make sure that they're in the right environment. So that's what I'd give. And I think that's why teaching is the best job in the world, because you're working with young people. Sometimes
not the best.
The best job in the world. I'm biased.
There's another one. There's another job.
Because you're working with young people who might be lacking self-belief, and you might work with that person for 5 years, and you will help them grow and develop.
Okay.
That's growth. I think we've covered a lot of ground there. From a lot of perspectives. We've talked about young people, we've talked about leaders, we've talked about workers in other professions as well.
I think one thing what we'll have to do is I'll probably go back and look through this episode and pick out certain things, because I feel like there's probably five things in this whole episode we can spend another whole episode talking about and diving into, which I think is really important. But should we wrap this up?
Let's wrap it up. So, folks, thanks very much for listening. This has been Podcast 8. We've been talking growth, and it's... Oh, we've got our regular sign-off. I nearly forgot.
You didn't.
2 golden things, folks. Work hard.
And be nice.
Thanks, guys.